Okay, that's all that. And that's why the reformers, I was surgeon.
Everybody great here.
Yeah.
How you doing?
Well,
We're looking at numbers.
I mean, Swiftly Hospital.
that file.
But then she will be inactive for 6 weeks.
She'll be, yeah, she can, after a few weeks, she'll be doing house. Turn that way to you. Over here with you.
Hey,
Unless you're so.
I forgot.
I just don't get it, like, you know, COVID's been very adjustment for kids in different ways for adults. And we were really careful for a while. And so we started doing more stuff. That was good. And it all stopped for 2 months. But, and when it was starting to, but like different kids, both our kids and other kids seem to adjust to it. It's a great at different levels of success. So, you saw what's talking about. It's like yourself to be fun. At least struggles and
Yeah, it doesn't go away.
but yeah, Jen looks out. Yeah, well, she's such a social kid, and then she had a lot of time out with them. And then sort of realizing that, and at least and that's great.
Feet down.
Small children need adjustments, right?
Adelia, we keep our ears open.
after the class is 5.
Well, welcome everyone. Glad that you're here for our annual meeting. I know that we have a lot of people who are watching online too, and so I just wanted to give them a warm greeting through the web. I wanted to offer a special word of thanks to Adelia because Adelia made the live stream happen. And she makes all the sound stuff happen at Grace every single Sunday. What's been really encouraging to me is not only the number of people that have been checking out live stream services when they're occurring, but also then after they've occurred. So we have lots of folks that are watching them throughout the week. And so that continues to be a valuable ministry, especially in our kind of bizarre time. And so I'm really grateful for all of her labors in making today possible as well. The other question I have is a housekeeping question. Like, Kyle, can you hear me? I'm audible? You're good in the back? Okay, thank you. We're also going to keep the meeting up online for people that weren't able to tune in during the meeting. They'll be able to watch it afterward and to hear all the presentations and so forth. So I'm grateful that you've all come out. If you want to take a booklet home for anybody else, we have extras in the back. And they were very pricey, so you should take them and give them to friends, give them to people that might be edified. Because I think the material actually, all joking aside, is edifying. And so I hope that if you want to bring them to anybody in the church or a spouse or a friend, feel free to do so. I'm officially now calling the meeting to order, and I would invite us to please stand as we begin with our opening prayer together. Why don't we say this in unison? It's on page 3. Let us pray. O God of unchangeable power and eternal light, look favorably on your whole church, that wonderful and sacred mystery. By the effectual working of your providence, carry out with tranquility the plan of salvation. Let the whole world see and know that things which were cast down are being raised up, and things which have grown old are being made new. and that all things are being brought to their perfection by him through whom all things were made, your Son, Jesus Christ our Lord, who lives and reigns with you in the unity of the Holy Spirit, one God, forever and ever. Amen. I invite you to be seated. In terms of vestry elections, I'll first make a word or offer a word about nominations, just so you're aware. It's been in your bulletin now for about a month. The pattern of making nominations, which is fairly straightforward and easy. 3 entities can nominate people for vestry election. The first entity is what's called the Nominating Committee. That's just a fancy term for the non-retiring vestry members. They can nominate. I, as the rector, have the unbridled power of making nominations. And last but not least, any member of this congregation can make a nomination with the support of 5 other members. The only trick is the nominee that you wish to nominate has to want to do it. But if that's the case, there is a petition that you simply fill out with the names of those who would support such a nomination, and that's another way in which nominations for election can be made. This time around, we have 2 nominees from the Nominating Committee for re-election. They've already served 1 term. They may, according to our bylaws, serve a 2nd term. And you're allowed to serve 2 consecutive terms as a vestry member. The 2 nominees for this election for 2 slots are Ruby Franklin and Denny Jacob. I'll say, just as a person who's now overseen the vestry for the last 3 years, that they've served not only admirably, but with real skill and have aided in the various ministries of our church, but also in the leadership of this church in ways that have been very beneficial. So I'm very grateful for them and for what they've done. So those were the 2 nominations for the 2 positions. And so because we only have 2 running for 2 slots, it's a vote by acclamation rather than paper ballot, because paper ballot wouldn't make sense. So basically, I just ask that all those who are in favor of electing Ruby Franklin and Denny Jacob to the slate to the vestry would signify so by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Okay. So the ayes have it. So I want to, again, thank them for their service and their willingness to serve again. I also wanted to simply comment upon the nature of staff and vestry relations at Grace Anglican. I only know my experience in 3 different parishes, working with various members of the staff and sitting in vestry meetings or being a member of a vestry in other parishes, very large parishes, very small parishes. I've seen vestries that are sweet but ineffectual. I've seen vestries that remind me something of an apocalyptic World War III scenario. And I'm very grateful that our vestry is neither ineffectual nor does it display any tendencies toward world domination or massacres. The staff and the vestry have worked together beautifully well, and I've been just deeply impressed with their ability to sift through difficult information, to discern well together, to offer push and pull when they need to, and to come up with good solutions to complex problems. So I've been sort of floored by the vestry that we have at this church, and I'm deeply impressed by them. I'd like to now offer an opportunity for several reports. And what I would like is, I have some questions that were asked of me, which I'll answer after during the Q&A period. But if you have any questions for any of the staff or vestry or anybody who's presenting, that's fine too. We're going to hear not from everybody who's written a letter, because we have several presentations in this booklet, and some of those folks won't be offering an oral presentation, but most will. I'll begin myself. And I'm there on page 4. I'm not going to summarize, well, I should say this. I'll in part summarize my letter, but what I would like to do is cede most of my time to the others who have important things to say. I'll simply say that 2001 had its challenges for all of us. And if anybody has been in a position of any leadership at all, you know the complexities that this year has entailed as you get the lovely opportunity to displease everyone. No, I'm kidding. But it sometimes feels that way just because you have to make complex decisions about complex matters, and that has taken a toll in some ways. But I will say that this church has been beautifully flexible and supportive, and for that I'm very grateful. This year we had three goals to meet that I set out at the beginning of 2021 that had to do with something external and something internal. 2 external bits, 1 internal bit. The 2 external bits were first a church plant in the town of Franklin that was going to be overseen by Eric Phillips. And Eric will give you a report on that current plant as well as its future plans. 2, the second bit of the external concern was a building. It was brought up on the vestry that we ought to have a building task force to not only research but make plans to acquire either a piece of property or a building that could be utilized for a church, or just a church that was willing to be sold, a church building. And so that team has begun its work in earnest this year under the leadership of Jake Jeffress, and he'll be presenting today as well. Lastly, there was an internal task force headed up by Ross Cooks, who is not here today, but his report is present in this booklet. Ross Cooks was overseeing kind of a new group that sought to explore how we might deepen our cell group ministry, expand our cell group ministry, and centralize some leadership in our cell group ministry. And there's more to be said about that in his report, but a key item in it is that our own Mandy Beck, who has served as our ministry coordinator, has had her role expanded, and part of her new expanded role entails oversight of cell groups. And there's more about those responsibilities in Ross's presentation, which is in this booklet. Regarding the complexities of the ongoing pandemic, you may know from the beginning, and I've used this language ad nauseum, but my plan was twofold, to boil it down too simply. Firstly, to engage frugally and with caution, given all the knowns and unknowns. Secondly is to inch our way toward normalcy, because there is a healthy normal in the church's ecclesiastical life, and I thought that we ought to inch toward that. So that has been our goal. To that end, we've offered live stream services now for well over a year, thanks to Adelia and her hard work. Also, we've done worship for students on Grove City campus for months and months, under the leadership of Don Shepson, who sacrificially worked out all of the many things that needed to be worked out in order to have that occur. And so I'm really grateful for him and his willingness to do that. We've also done outdoor services. At least in the last 2 years, we've done 8 months worth of outdoor services for worship, just so we could provide an environment in which more and more people could come to those events, to a worship event. And then we've had masked-only services on and off, given the warp and woof of the pandemic. Additionally, I wanted to let you know, somebody asked about our 9 a.m. services, which were being held at the Methodist Church, put on hiatus briefly. I am hearing back from Ed's oh my gosh, Sandman. What's his last name? I can't. What's that? Saxman. Thank you. I knew it began with an S. And he was in contact with me this week, and they're very open to that. He just needed to talk to a few of his leaders to work it out. He, as things progress, What we're planning to do is offer a masked only option, regardless of how things work for a while regarding masking policies at Tower and elsewhere. We're going to be offering a masked service every Sunday at 9 a.m. That's my hope in that chapel beginning next week. Now, I will let you know more when I know more, but he's talking to his leaders today, I believe today and tomorrow, and so that will be offered, which I'm very happy about and happy to do. So that's something about the pandemic, but let me get to some other details that I think are signs of life and vitality here at the church. In the last year, we've had 10 baptisms. About half were adult baptisms and half were young children. 4 different marriages, actually it's 5, I forgot one. 1 ordination, our own Eric Phillips was ordained to the presbyterate, and many of you are here for that event, at which Bishop Grant Lamarcon officiated. We had 10 confirmations of people who were willing to confirm their baptismal vows. I wanted to also add that one of the things that we'll be doing this year is not only exploring, but hopefully hiring a consistent nursery aide for both services. That is, having a paid person there for every service to build consistency for children, as well as to relieve our volunteers. One of the challenges with a nursery at every service is very simply that it takes a lot of people to make that ministry happen. I mean, it really is the thing that takes up most of our volunteers, and we want to free people up a little bit by hiring somebody, and it's not terribly expensive to do, but that's in the new budget. I also want to offer some special thanks to several people. First, to our musicians, I want to say thank you to Bethany, of course, who's just done such a superb job, and she's wonderful to work with. But we also have a rotating group of about 10 volunteers who helped with music, and Andrew Mitchell, who has put together these brass ensembles at key moments of the church's life. It's been so helpful. I want to thank Gillis Harp, who helps me to plan, coordinate, and fill with people our Christian education series so that we have good things to offer you in terms of instruction on Sundays, and he's worked very hard to make sure that that happens and happens well. I also wanted to thank Elizabeth Blakely. She's not written here, but she's helped to fine-tune our website. So if you go to our website now, it looks a lot better than it looked then. And it's still a work in progress. There are things to come, but she's working hard to update things. So I'm grateful for that. Our 2002 goals, friends, I decided after 2001, and what I am deducing is a level of exhaustion that is not only in me, but might also be in you, that having very new, flashy goals right now might not be the most awesome thing. Instead, I think it would be best to invest in the goals that were already made in 2001, regarding continued support for the church plant, hopefully acquiring a building, and lastly, continuing to implement some changes in our cell group ministry under the leadership of Mandy Beck. So our goals in 2022 are to live into the goals and expand and deepen into the goals of 2001. So that's what I've got for you. And at this point, what I would like to do is hand things over to our own Steve Mattson.
Hello there. As I reflect back on 2021 and all things family ministries here at Grace, the best way for me to describe that is vibrant. I think it's been a vibrant year for us, especially all things considered with a continuation of COVID here and a lot of bobbing and zigging and zagging for us. And most of what that looked like when I talk about it being vibrant is actually in your report. So I'm not going to go through a lot of details. You can read that report, and hopefully that'll give you a good idea of what our year looked like. But I do attribute that vibrancy to a couple different things. First is the caliber of the students, the kids, and families of Grace here. Just I wish that you could actually be there every Tuesday night at Casa and see the kids who show up and make up that gathering, just the caliber of students, But also, I just, on Sundays afternoons in each of the classrooms here, as kids get together for Barnhouse, it's amazing to watch them. I don't think there's probably a Sunday or Tuesday that goes by where not a kid asks me a question that I just flat out have to admit I don't know. Just in a class, at a small group gathering, just the questions and the way that they ask them is just, it's intimidating actually, and terrifying. But the families here at Grace, you should be very proud of the way that you are raising your children and who they're becoming. Also, I attribute that vibrancy to the teachers and leaders who are invested in this program. There's over some 40 of you who show up every week and pour your lives into these kids and just really give of yourself and teach. And I'm really grateful for them. And we would not be nearly as healthy in family ministries without them. And so I'm really grateful for each and every one of them. So that's just a little bit of what makes family ministries here be such a successful year. One of the things that Ethan asked us to do is just share really quickly about a story that just stands out through the year. And there's two of them. One I'll share now, and then I'll share at the end. The first is there is like a Christmas party at Casa we do every year. It's in the like late of December, and usually we don't see Grove City College students who are some of our leaders because they're already home for the holidays because it starts early. And on this past year's Christmas party, a couple students showed up that I was not expecting. And one of the students, I was really shocked that they had shown up. And I was like, "What are you doing here?" And they were like, "Well, I couldn't have missed this party." And I was like, "Well, that's crazy because you live a long ways away and this is your break." And they're like, "Oh yeah, I know, I'm leaving tonight." And I kind of put the numbers together. I was like, "You're not gonna get home till 2 or 3 at night." And they're like, "Oh, I know, it's fine. I want to be here. This is where I wanted to be, and it's worth it." So then I went into parent mode and was like, "Now you need to text me when you get home. You need to make sure you're parent." But that just shows you the kind of student leaders and leaders that we have pouring into the kids of this church. They're not here because they're required to, or they're kind of feeling this mandate, like they're bored and need to do something. They're here because they're invested in these kids, and it shows. And that's what's so powerful about the leaders that we have within the program. For me, this has been a great year because I'm really privileged and I'm grateful to work with such an incredible staff here at Grace. Ethan says it every time he gets up here about how great the staff that I get to work with every day is, and the team is top notch, and so I'm really grateful for that as well. The last story I want to share, there's so many, so little time to share, but the last story that just kind of, I guess, to me says God's just all over this place is kind of a funny story, one unexpected, you might think, is it happened to me last week. We had Casa last Tuesday, and one of the kids came in, and they were walking through our house, and I just said, "Hey, how's it going?" And they walked right by me like I wasn't even there, and they literally beelined it to one of our leaders and immediately just started throwing up, not literally, but throwing up their whole week on them. This was an incredible week. And you could tell they could not hardly wait to get to Casa to talk to this particular leader about what was going on in their week. And they wanted to talk with that particular leader who was their leader. And they didn't even see me. And the reason why I think that's so great is, one, because as Ethan talks about it in different times about his leadership at the church, the program and family ministries is not about me. It has nothing to do with me other than I just get to play a really small part in the lives of your families. It's about God and about a lot of the volunteers who show up each week. And what it shows is that it's not about me, that a kid could walk right by me in my own house as I say hello to them to go see a leader who's really, really more important. And that's what I consider to be the vitality of real ministry, is when God shows up like that. I want to say thank you for entrusting me with the families and the ministries of this program called Grace Anglican, and I find it a privilege and an honor to be here. And I'm looking forward to another year and seeing what God has planned for us again.
Steve hinted at this, but one of the amazing things that's occurring within that ministry is the training of college students in basic youth ministry and care. And so he has a very vibrant and large staff of volunteers who are investing their lives into the lives of our own students. And so that's really a way of discipling people, is you teach them, you train them how to lead, and he's doing that. And he also has a large worship team made up of our high school students, teaching them how to engage with worship in a deeper way. So thank you, Steve, very much. And now I'd like to turn our attention to Dr. Shepson's report.
Hello, everyone. I want to echo some of the things that Steve mentioned there, too. When I think about my role and responsibility as the campus missioner, I think of it as one of really being a connector, and not necessarily needing to be the guy that's up front, right? So I'm happy to see college students interacting with you all and with the residents of the college, especially. When I look across the report I've written here, the word that sticks out to me that I'm most pleased by is that first word, assistant. And I'm just really grateful to be able to assist Ethan in his leadership and his responsibility at the church. But it means I don't have to be the upfront guy. Someone else is doing that. And I get to kind of work backdoor and in back ways to make these really cool relationships and connections. I do want to read to you the mission statement for the college group. It says, it's about the third or fourth line down there. It's in italics. The college ministry at Grace Anglican Church seeks to create opportunities to connect students with the larger Grace Anglican Church community, nurture spiritual growth through mentoring relationships, and explore Anglican rhythms of life, worship, and prayer. And over the last year, we've been doing that. We've been able to complete that mission statement, or I shouldn't say complete it, it's ongoing. We're doing that mission statement, and we're doing it with your help. And so I'm really grateful. I'm grateful for you all to be participating with me in the college ministry, however that looks, whether it's bringing soup to the soup lunch, or hosting students in your homes, or mentoring students. A number of you are mentoring college students. I can't express to you enough the importance of those one-on-one relationships with college students. We have, best as I can tell, about 135 college students that come, maybe as many as 150, depending on who shows up each week. 150 students, that's a huge number of students that come to our church. And you all have important interaction with them, just saying hi and checking in. How are you doing? What's going on in your week? Really important stuff. I'm not going to read my report here for you. You can do that. But I just want to encourage you to keep that up. Keep doing that work. Especially, I've noticed being on campus and having an office on campus that I have students almost on a daily basis that just stop by my office to check in and say hi and maybe ask a question of something Anglican or something that came up in a sermon or something that Grace Anglican is doing. And I know that I have colleagues there as well. So just encourage you to lean into that, participate with them, and engage them. The last thing I want to say, and then I will cede my time because there are other more important things out there, but I made one mistake on this report, and I want to, after I sent it in, I thought I needed to comment on this. Right there in the middle of the bold, it says the musical team. We have 5 musicians last spring, previous spring on campus that assisted me. They were college students, but when we moved this fall back on campus, those college students had either graduated or they were doing other things and they weren't available. And I tapped the CASA worship team on the shoulder and asked, would there be anyone from the high school program that would be willing to come over and lead worship? And I had 3 guys that jumped in. And I want to identify those 3 guys because it's like the best of Grace Anglican. Will Mueller, Nolan Cowan, and Wyatt Shepson. Those 3 guys were fearless. They sat and stood and led and sang in front of college students for weeks on end. And they were terrified, but you know what? They did amazing job, and the college students loved it. They were really excited. So I want to thank those guys in particular, and just grateful for their help. I'm grateful for your assistance and your willingness to support me in ministry. It's really exciting stuff to see college students growing and maturing in Christ. So thank you.
Dawn also helps out a great deal with counseling. A lot of students, because of the kind of bizarre transitional time that college entails, are going through a lot of seismic shifts in their own lives, and they need to process that material prayerfully with somebody, and he's been a trustworthy advocate for them in the midst of that crucible. So I want to thank him for being a constant support in that way. Also, now I'd like to call up Mandy Beck. You may know that Mandy stepped forward whenever Sarah Potter got a fuller time position at the college, and Sarah served with excellence. And we definitely love Sarah Potter and are grateful that she handed the baton to Mandy, who has done such a great job for us. But Mandy, it's all you.
Hello. Yes, I want to reiterate what a lot of staff have already said, and I promise we're not getting paid to say it. But working with staff has truly been amazing. Working with you all has also been such a blessing to me as I've stepped into this role that Sarah wonderfully handed over and transitioned me into. But yeah, I just wanted to speak briefly of a few areas that I hope run. I know that you probably get a million emails from me. You're like, what in the world does she do? I do a lot. So you can read most of it in the report, but I do a few main areas. One of them is communication. So I help just, one, plug in new people into Grace, whether they want to be involved in a cell group or serving, or even just to hear news, and weekly emails and our weekly newsletters, another way that I do that. I send those out, and just kind of really help make sure that the Grace community can know what is going on and what a wonderful staff is doing and events that they're having, and kind of make sure that that's being communicated. So another area that I oversee, and I feel like this is where I've really seen the church flourish and go above and beyond, is our Sunday mornings and evening services, especially with everything that has happened with COVID and with other factors that we've been low staffed with servers and with people who are able to come out and help, and have really seen so many go above and beyond in serving and helping. And while I'm sure you guys all have loved receiving many frantic emails from me about needing help all of a sudden, I am really excited to say that our numbers are increasing to the point where I get to have even people on standby for if and when people are sick, and so I'm really excited about that. So another thing that I get to do is work with Steve, help coordinate teachers, and again, he's been amazing to work with as far as the whole staff is as well. And then cell group ministry, I'm really excited for that. So again, we have wonderful leaders, wonderful cell group leaders, who last fall, it was harder, there wasn't as much maybe initiated participation, so they really had to go out and invite and welcome. And I think I maybe just received 5 to 6 people interested in cell groups. Whereas today's really the first day that we've really put it out there, and I've already heard from 12 people wanting to join groups, and we're not even at the evening service yet. So I'm already really excited for this new year and people being plugged in more to the cell groups and growing alongside the rest of us at Grace. So that's a little bit of what I wanted to highlight, but again, wanted to thank all of you for being such wonderful people to work for. I've worked for churches in the past, and I've thought, man, they've been great churches, and I've worked for this, and I'm like, wow, this is also an incredible church. So I've been so thankful, so pleased, and appreciate your flexibility and your kindness and your willingness to want to serve and make Grace such a warm community. So thank you all.
One of the things that you'll all understand, especially if you've worked in institutions that have grown, and I'm still getting used to this, to be honest, growth is both good and challenging, because you then, as you grow, face more issues and more complex dynamics than you would have faced previously when you were smaller. And one of the ways in which we've sought to address those concerns is by hiring Sarah and then now hiring Mandy, and they've done a phenomenal job with communication. And there'll be more challenges to come, but I have no doubt that they have the chops. So I wanted to now invite Eric, our illustrious church planter, to come and make his presentation.
Hey everybody. So it's trying to figure out what not to say instead of what to say. But I was thinking just back whenever I was preparing this, and I had to actually go back to my presentation last year at the annual meeting, because so much has happened that I was like confused in my mind. I'm like, wait, did that happen this year? Or wait, when did that happen? But it was interesting to me because I went back and last year at this time I was talking about how the curacy was ending, and I was prepared for this summer to be ordained a priest. And then I talked about how as a church we were going to take more seriously praying and pursuing this idea of planting a church in Franklin. And also in my presentation, I noted how it seemed like the pandemic was waning so we could move ahead with the church plant. And I was so young and naive back then. But it's amazing because so much has happened. And I just want to highlight a couple of things, but just kind of following through the path. I think one of the things that is awesome is that this entire process was covered in so much prayer and so much discernment. And what's important to me is as we're shifting and forming an identity in Franklin, like this truly was a plant of Grace Anglican Church. Like we came together, we prayed, we got feedback, we changed and morphed and sought God's directing, but we did it as a church. And that's an awesome thing. But so after our prayer and discernment, we formulated an awesome core leadership team that consists of Colleen, the Cowans, the Morgans, and the Illigs. And they have been phenomenal in helping guide and direct and give wisdom and insight. And it's been a great team because we enjoy each other, and yet also they will confront me and call me out, which is the perfect team that you could ever want to have. We also were blessed to find a facility. First Baptist of Franklin welcomed us in for our 4 monthly worship services, and they have been amazing. They welcomed us in and charged us only $50 and gave us everything that we asked for. I started feeling bad because I'd be like, oh, could we maybe use the nursery? Oh yeah, could we possibly put a big sign right in front of your church? And it's just, but they just kept saying yes. And excitingly, I just signed a contract with them for the coming year. And they basically are allowing us to completely share their facility, have full use of it during the week, and we can use it at any point in time. They're also providing an office for me, and they truly are like just welcoming us in and sharing their space with us.
I'm
which
totally jealous.
Yes. But as I had mentioned, we've held 4 monthly worship services. And the attendance has been great. We've had a number from Grace who have come out and supported us, and a number of college students. But what's been phenomenal is we've also been getting more and more people from the Franklin community coming out. And what's phenomenal about that is the plan was to use these 4 monthly services to kind of develop our own kind of core team, our own identity, to kind of get our feet on the ground, and then to launch out in February and then begin doing more kind of promotion and outreach and stuff. So we really, outside of that really cool large sign in front of the church, we've not done much outreach, and yet word is already getting around. And even I've been serving by praying at the hospital at UPMC Northwest about once a week. And it's been interesting because when they notice the dude with the collar and that I'm not the Roman Catholic priest, a number of people have mentioned, oh, wait, so you're that church, that Anglican church, right? And but they've already been hearing about it. And that's great because we've basically done nothing yet. But as we kind of press in and move forward, like I said, next week we're going to begin regular weekly worship services. And as we do that, we're also going to begin focusing more and more on outreach, mission, and promotion. One of the big things that has to do with getting word out there and building a reputation is having a name. And so we chose a name. We're Redeemer Anglican Church of Franklin. We're also been working on developing a website, and Aaron Cowan has been hugely helpful with that, and begin kind of expanding that and growing that. And also having a desire to start eventually, as we get more and more people from the Franklin area, developing our own cell group system. With a vision of doing outreach and discipleship through a decentralized lens, through hospitality and welcoming people into our homes. But just to kind of finish off, this coming year is extremely exciting because we're going to be kind of developing our sense as a church, developing our identity, worshiping weekly. There's one sad thing is because it kind of hit me that we're going to weekly worship, so I'm not going to be seeing you guys every week. And that kind of makes me sad. I'm really excited, but I love you guys. I love Grace Anglican. But one of the things that that kind of tied into as we were wrestling with names is that Redeemer we chose because redemption and grace can never be separated. They're intimately tied together. There is no redemption without the grace of God. And so there is no Redeemer Anglican without Grace Anglican. And so for me, it's a reminder, and my dream is not that we get a ton of people in 4 months or 10 months or whatever. That'd be great. What my dream is that in 20 years, that you will have Redeemer Anglican and Grace Anglican, two parishes still intimately tied together, doing projects together, gathering for Easter celebrations together, and that there would be a rich and healthy foundation of this message that is so radically centered on the gospel, and it would just continue to spread both in Grove City and in Venango County.
I also wanted to just simply commend Eric for I don't know how else to put it, but excellent fundraising. You may know that Grace Anglican in 2020, we do an annual fundraiser amongst our alumni. We generally speaking raise about $25,000 per year, and then the vestry decides where to put that money. It might just be in the funds of the church, or it could be for a project. That year, all that money was set aside for the first 3 years of the church plant's life. So every year for the first 3 years, they get like an injection of funds from that collection of funds from 2020. And so our funds were raised from that, and that's going to Eric. But then Eric did personal fundraising among friends and family, but then among the churches in our diocese. They said he wrote to many churches, and he and I together sent a packet to them saying, if you wish to support a church plant, but you're not currently planting a church, here's one way you could support. And a bunch of the cardinal parishes of the diocese did. In fact, St. Stephen's in Sewickley sent a check for $10,000 to support the plant. And lots of other churches have done so as well. And he's been doing the preaching tour at all these churches to connect them with this new movement. So it isn't just a Grace Anglican thing, it's sort of a diocesan thing at some level too, which is very encouraging. And the diocese itself also gave money to this endeavor. And so I'm just really grateful that the Lord has provided all the funds needed to kick this thing off and to get it off the ground, not just for 1 year, but for several. I mean, that's not nothing. And some of you remember, Gillis remembers, I mean, when we started this thing, I don't know, but he and I were clearly making bank at the time, but we didn't have enough together to keep this thing going. But as we look back, it's sort of miraculous that it happened at all. But what I'm so encouraged by right now with Eric is that these funds are there from the beginning because of the generosity of these many churches and of the diocese and of our alumni. So anyway, so a thank you to him. I would now like to call the illustrious Jake Jeffress to the stand, please. Jake has been the face and the head of the building task force, does an excellent job with them, and he has some things to report to you that I think you'll find encouraging.
Just a teeny bit higher. All right. Well, I'd like to thank our team, our building task force team. First of all, Rachel Verbois, Chris Homan, Cliff Brown, Kyle Sutton, and Sydney Henriquez. It was an awesome team to work with, and we continue to work on looking for building options for Grace Anglican Church. Early on, we met, it wasn't quite the beginning of the year, but it was May 1st was our first meeting, I think, or the last day of April. And it was a positive meeting. We were really excited to start the process of looking for a building. We broke it down into 3 phases, which you can find in the handout that I provided. The first phase being we're going to look for churches that are currently functioning as churches and see if they would like to partner together or sell their buildings, something of that nature. We would look for warehouses in phase 2 or other locations which might be conducive to a church setting that we could renovate, and then we would look for land. In my plan there, I put pictures of each. Those aren't obviously local, but Ethan asked for pictures, and so I just pulled those off Google. If we can find a building with a 14,000-foot mountain, that would be ideal. If you know where one is in Mercer County, highest point I think is 1,000 feet, so we're going to have to do a lot of excavating to get that mountain here. But we were blessed in that when we were looking out there for churches, we had people looking everywhere. We were going to different churches, talking to different churches. As a team, though, we kind of decided on the Lutherans because they were interested. We had approached them previously about working together. We've reached such a critical mass now. The question was kind of raised to them, would you ever be interested in working on some form of transition plan? And they were surprisingly receptive to that. Those talks are still happening as we speak. In fact, some members of the team had breakfast just yesterday with members of their team to discuss those very topics. It's a slow process. I think it's a very delicate process as well, being respectful of them and not doing things that would be behind their back or disingenuous and reaching out to other churches at the same time. So we do ask for patience as we move through the process. That's obviously a difficult decision that they have to make, but one that we want them to consider for us and for them. So if that does not work out, Cliff Brown has started looking into possible land options. But while we're working with the Lutheran Church, my suggestion would not be to be discussing options with other churches. I just don't think that would be right. So right now, we're talking with the Lutherans, and we're looking at possible lands options in case that doesn't work out. But both those are going to be slow go. So we ask for your prayers and patience. And if you have any ideas or $10 million checks, you can forward those on to Ethan. I'm sure he'd be very happy with that. So I think that's all I have. Thank you.
Just to note something about the nature of our small town. You may remember that we put out a statement in a bulletin about this conversation that we were having with the Lutherans, just to show you how things work in a small town. Guess how long that took to get back to folks there? One day. So things get now, but thankfully, Jake and I talked and said, if we're going to make a statement, just a benign statement of, hey, we're having official conversations, let's put it in the bulletin, but let's run it past them first, which we did, and they were very grateful that we did that. But not everybody knew, their leaders knew, but not everybody knew that we were doing that. But word gets out very quickly here. So we're not trying to be surreptitious or too quiet with you all about these conversations. We're just trying to be discreet, because as you know, when one church is struggling or is looking toward a future and they're uncertain, that's a delicate thing, because that's their family, right? And that's the building that their kids were confirmed in, and it's complicated. And so we want to honor that. But if things are going positively, and we do ask for your prayers that they would continue in that direction. Thank you, Jake. And now our treasurer wants to make a presentation. Just so you know, the man that has year after year made sure all of the deposits are in, everything is counted correctly, everything is simpatico with bank transactions, and the man who is connected to our bookkeeper, Joanne Baptiste, though she just retired. And she's an amazing woman who is hyper gifted, and she was just replaced by a young woman named Liz, who is very capable. So I'm not worried about that, but we were very helped by Joanne for many, many years. But the person that connects the church to our bookkeeper and makes sure all those things are meet and right has been Tim Homan. And so I'm really grateful for his consistent service for the last 10 years doing this work. So Tim has a presentation to make.
I'm glad, Mandy, when she sent everything out, you've had a chance to look through, because as our church grows, finances grow, expenses grow, things get more complicated, so you've had a chance to look through. So let me just highlight a few things. Again, giving was up. So in the midst of 2021, churches struggling, Grace Anglican, our giving was higher than ever, a 6% increase over last year in that. And Ethan was able to crown the Queen this year with the fundraising. What's that?
I don't think everybody knows what you mean.
Oh, the fundraising. So Ethan always has a little, I don't want to say game, little cheesy gimmick. There we go. And this year it was, as the funds grew in the alumni, the crown was dropping closer to the Queen's head, and we were able to crown the Queen again this year with a successful fundraising. And again, it's great to come up here and, as the one who kind of talks about the nuts and bolts in finances, to be able to do it with a spirit of gladness and joy, because I have good news to share. And so not only was giving up, but once again, every year in anticipation that as we grow our budget, are we going to be able to meet that budget, is we've met all of our expenses with just regular giving. And so fundraising then is freed for us to think about other projects like a church plant or further mission giving, or as you'll see this year, given all the above and beyond work our staff has done, we felt it was appropriate to give them a bonus at the end of the year too. So that was part of what was done this year as well. But again, as Ethan highlights, and here in the report, I mean, our alumni are just remarkably generous with our fundraising. So again, we're setting aside some money for next year, $10,000. The other thing that we're doing is the surplus from this year and the remaining amount from our fundraising this year is being set aside in the building fund. And part of this is trying to be very intentional to the congregation and the parish that this is a priority. And so we want to make sure we've got funds and that this is really a direction we want to think about going. And so we're just trying to make sure we're in a really good place, and we are. As you'll see, we have $95,000 sitting in a building fund, okay? So we're in a very good position that way as well. We have an increase of 5% in our budget, and this is going to include, and again, when you have a church and listening to people, big jumps in youth and children's ministries because they're growing, and we have a great program going, and Steve does a great job, and we just want to make sure he has the resources he needs. So those are getting, as well as being a bigger church, our increase in our tithe to the diocese is growing as well as increasing with our mission giving. There's a separate budget, again, as things grow in our church plants, so you'll see a separate list of expenses and income for the year. Again, giving exceeding what was anticipated there. So even our church plant is in a really good place financially. So I mean, it's just great to talk about how good God has been to us. It's so many years, and in spite of what 2021 brought, we've really been blessed as well. Okay, and so we're really in a good place to look forward to the year ahead. Let me also just say that, as Ethan alluded to, Joanne Baptiste. So in 2009, as treasurer of the church, I did everything on top. So that was paying rent checks, or I got to write checks for Ethan's salary and housing and everything. I was managing it all, and it was just getting to be a bit much. And as our church continues to grow, as you can see, expenses and just get more complex, and there are more of them. And this is where the opportunity to kind of bring a number of churches under the umbrella of St. Peter's and their person, Joanne Baptiste. And I just want to give a shout out to Joanne. She retired, and I had a chance to go down and attend her retirement party, which was only the second time I've ever met her, in spite of the gazillion emails that have gone back and forth. She has an eagle eye. If something is not right, I will hear about it, and we will get it squared away. But it's also, as we move forward, we do have our challenges. Liz Herman, I think, will do a great job. But realize that we have multiple sources of giving here. And so one of the things that has been a challenge through the pandemic, and I appreciate your patience for this, is because sometimes things aren't always as timely as we would like. But, I mean, we have money coming online, 9 o'clock mass service, morning service here, evening service, Franklin Church plant, through the mail. It's just sometimes a bit of a challenge to make sure it's all collected, which we do eventually, but sometimes it's just hunting it down and making sure we've got it all. So we're working on a plan for that to try to make it a little bit more consistent and better, but thank you for your patience that way. And also, having worked with Joanne, there was a little glitch this year in the printouts for the giving statements. So if you have not received a giving statement from the church, please either email me, I think Ethan has my email address in here, and I will be sure to make sure I get that for you, okay, and in the mail. So if it hasn't arrived by now, please let me know, and I'll hunt it down for you.
One of the things to point out, just very briefly, is since we've been doing these alumni fundraisers, we have received over $250,000 from our alumni. I mean, just think about that for a minute, and how incredible that's been, and what ministries that's permitted, because it's given us some financial freedom. Currently, as Tim alluded to, in our savings account, we have $113,000, which is separate from our building fund, in which we have $95,000. Okay? Why I think that's incredible, personally, is that we have $95,000 in a building fund without having yet done a capital campaign. So that's quite something. We are in a good position if something does work out in the near future, that we'll be able to jump on it. So I'm very grateful for that, and grateful for the Vestry's willingness to create that fund. If you're interested in more just figures, basic figures, we have several pages of those in this booklet. Page 14 is the income and expenses of the church. Page 15 is the church plant. And then page 17, with these pie charts, is the 2022 income, expected income and expenses of the church. If you're interested in giving and attendance trends, they are in these charts here. I have no experience with making charts in Word, so the fact that I could make these is a borderline miracle, because it's not my strong suit. But those are interesting, and I would argue really encouraging figures and charts to see at least some of the things that the Lord has been up to. If you're interested in how the mission fund goes to projects that are external to Grace Anglican directly. If you're interested to know what we have supported from the mission fund, that's on the very back page with ministries as well as numbers of what was given to those ministries. So they're all right there. And there's a lot of important things that we support. Some are local, some are national, some are international. And that comes from the theme from Acts chapter 1, that Jesus talks about going to Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, and the ends of the earth. In other words, you begin where you are, and you branch out from there. And so that's what our mission giving tries to reflect. If any of you have any local, national, or international ministries that you think could be supported, we are always willing to hear that. And so just email me, email us. We'd love to hear from you about that kind of thing. So I want to thank everybody who made a presentation. And I have some questions that I received that I am hoping to answer, but I also wanted to see if you had any questions at all for any of us. And if you do, please, by all means. Yeah, Chris.
I don't know who this question is for, but it's about the building. I was just curious if in part of the building task force, or if there's been a task force that's just been charged to just assess the finances. What's the range of buildings that might cost us? What's the kind of money we would need in the bank for potential repairs, renovation, and all these kinds of things? Do we have a kind of sense of, has someone gone through the numbers, just have a sense of, hey, here's the number we're looking for. If we got to that, we know we'd be good. That would give us enough for a down payment. That would give us enough for repairs, maintenance, kind of all that stuff.
I think that is likely probably stage 2 of the task force interest. The first thing was to look at possibilities, and the second then would be to narrow down about questions like that. But Jake, do you have anything to say about that?
I mean, we have a rough idea, but it's so variable what we're looking at right now. I mean, if you look at building new construction, it's a number, astronomical number that's not even close to what it would be buying a building that's currently established. If you buy a building that's currently established and it's a very grand building, the numbers are off the charts. If it's a smaller building with a shingle roof, it's different. The numbers are so different. We want to narrow down to what we're looking at first before we just assign random numbers to it. That can be whatever we want it to be if we just put random numbers out there.
One of the reasons that we're looking, for example, at the church that has previously been discussed is because it's fairly newer construction. It seats about 340 to 360 people, and it has lots of space for Christian education as well as dinners, and it's in the middle of a residential area with a park nearby. But the building itself looks like it's been kept in very good condition. And so we've taken that into consideration in our discussions, but the exact figures we haven't worked on until we're kind of at that next stage. But that is of interest, yeah.
So with that, is there a sense, I was just trying to think of how we know with like fundraising and what we know we need to save up for. Do we have plans for that?
Not quite yet.
Yeah.
No. Yeah, Gillis.
Just a quick question there, probably for Jake. So just, I realize you have to be sensitive about the environment and so forth, but would you say, would it be accurate to say that the kind of discussions we're having with our Lutheran friends could lead to a kind of rent-to-own situation? Is that a good way to describe it, or?
Yeah, I would say that's a great way to describe it. Some way where you could do a transition where they could leave the church in the manner that they wanted to leave the church, and we could enter in at that point. Which also why it makes the number. I mean, it would be very difficult to put a number on it because you're dealing with other individuals that would be putting that number. No number, though, has been given to us. I'm sure if that number was very, very high, to kind of go back to Chris's question, we would have to have a bigger plan than if they said, oh, we'll just give it to you. It's two very different things to be dealing with. So we just don't have those answers to be able to formulate those kinds of equations yet.
That said, those questions are, of course, enormously important.